Have you ever felt like you're sprinting through a coding marathon, only to trip over a few bugs and end up crawling to the finish line? When we think about coding and programming, we imagine a coder typing 100 words per minute with lines of code appearing in the editor at the speed of thought. I like to compare fast coding to speed chess or bullet chess, and slow methodical coding to classical chess. And there is a difference. There's actually a very big difference in terms of how you play your game. One of them gives you an adrenaline rush. One of them gives you that feeling of euphoria. You feel that rush going through your body. The other one's more relaxed, more composed, and allows you to think in a more focused way. Check out this game real fast. Now, this is a bullet game that I played. I'm using it as a reference, as a demonstration of what I mean when it comes to what it means to code fast or to just do anything fast. And what you're going to see is that I'm making a lot of moves very fast. I'm doing a pawn rush or a pawn storm, and I'm forcing my opponent to make critical decisions that are contrary to the actual opening game strategy that a person would typically implement when it comes to playing a classical game. Again, this is bullet chess, not classical chess. So the opening strategy goes out the window. And if I try to use some of these moves in a classical game or a longer duration game, I will get decimated 10 out of 10 times. But in bullet chess, I'm forcing my opponents to think. I throw them off their game. They typically don't see moves like this, and that buys me time. But again, take a look at these moves, and these are not sound opening moves. And now in some of the moves, or in some of the games that I like to play, I implement strategies from this book, The Art of Attack in Chess. And it's about attack hard, attack fast, and attack often. That is the strategy. But you often have to implement rules from logical chess, logical thinking. You have to be able to think strategically, not think about the immediate move at hand, but think about the bigger picture, the board. What's the essence of the board? And the reason why that's important is because if you want to become one of the greats, and I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that I'll ever get to this level, but if you want to be the Magnus Carlsen or the Bobby Fischer, then you're going to have to think long term. Now, this applies to new coders just learning how to code and professional programmers with years of experience. When you're brand new to coding, you want to move fast. You want to learn as fast as possible. You rush through the tutorials. You speed up the video from 1.25 to 1.5x, especially when I'm teaching code because I tend to teach slower or talk slower. For instance, if you take a look at my video on how to code a custom WordPress theme with DevWP, that video is 5.5 hours long. And I'm not the fastest talker, especially when I'm trying to explain complex topics. So sometimes what people do is they'll speed up the video. They'll make it go faster. And hey, if you want to support this channel and if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, consider going to picksomeweb.com and purchasing a copy of DevWP. It really helps me out. I mean, have you seen the cost of a dozen eggs nowadays, or a gallon of milk, or a gallon of gas? Everything's expensive. Thank you for your early support. But now, if you rush the process, by speeding up the video and the tutorial, you might get a sense of what the code is doing, but you might be missing out on the essence. How does that piece of code fit into the larger puzzle? Now, if you're a pro, then you have confidence. You know what you're doing. So you feel like you could code faster and faster and even faster. You've been doing this for years. That confidence, it fuels you. Now, what fuels me when I'm coding? Coffee. Coffee in, code out. Sometimes too much coffee. So what I'm trying to say here is that slowing down leads to faster code. Your code will most likely be cleaner, more efficient, easier to maintain. Now again, I like to compare this to speed chess or bullet chess because that's something that I do often. I play a lot of fast chess, but I also play a lot of classical chess. And I can see the difference. My strategy changes. When I'm playing classical chess, I'm trying to develop my visualization technique. How can I see ahead? How many moves ahead can I see? How many moves can I calculate? But let me tell you, when I'm playing bullet chess, that adrenaline rush, that rush that we get inside of us, that's powerful. That wakes me up. That feeling of making moves, writing code, and getting to the finish line. But it's like what I always tell my kids. Most people want to start at the finish line. Don't be that person. Respect the process. Now, really, what is the problem with speed chess or bullet chess and speed coding, and how do they correlate? Well, let me just focus on code here, because if you're writing code fast, you're going to increase the likelihood of bugs in your code. You're going to have possible syntax errors. And I know code editors nowadays, they'll let you know in advance if you have a syntax error. But what you're going to find is that while you're trying to code fast, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time having to go over that code multiple times, refactoring that code. You're going to have decreased code quality, and it's going to be so hard for you or for anybody else who's working on that project to maintain. And think about it. You're moving fast. You're typing fast. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to overlook critical things or critical aspects of what your code should be doing. And let's face it, nowadays, security is a big deal. It's been a big deal for a long time, but we know attacks are getting more sophisticated, so we have to think ahead. Remember, an attacker only has to be correct once. We have to be able to defend every single time. And when you're coding fast, you're definitely going to miss the big picture, and you're going to accumulate a lot of technical debt. There's going to be a lot of bugs that you have to refactor. And that's the paradox of slow coding. It ends up being faster in the long term. Let's think about it this way. If you have a project, you got to get the project done within a specific deadline. Your intuition is going to be to try to get it done as fast as possible. You might jump in front of your computer and start typing as fast as you can, trying to get as many lines of code done as fast as possible. And you think that might be a good strategy, but in reality, a lot of planning has to go into that. You got to start thinking deeply, deeper thinking, strategic thinking. It's not about how many lines of code you write, it's about the quality of the code you write. You have to spend time analyzing what problems are you trying to solve. You got to plan the structure and the logic of the code. And this is part of my who, what, when, where, why, and how framework of thinking when writing code. When we think about variables, when we think about functions and objects, when we think about loops and conditionals and everything that we try to implement within our code, our classes and objects, our logic, you got to think about who is this for? Who's going to be maintaining it? Who's going to be working on it? Who's going to be using it? What is the purpose of it? Making sure you have a clear idea of what the code, at least that small snippet of code, what is it supposed to do? And to have a single responsibility type of methodology. When is the code supposed to be implemented, or when is it supposed to be triggered? Especially when it comes to security, because when we talk about data validation versus sanitation, timing matters when you validate that data and when you sanitize it. And then code organization. Where in your program or your structure of your code are you going to be implementing that? In what files, in what folders? Naming conventions. What names are you going to be applying to the variables, to the functions, to the classes? And how does the logic all flow together? And these are just a few tips for slowing down when it comes to code. Break down the code into smaller, more manageable parts. You want to keep your functions short. You want to keep your files as short as possible. You don't want to have one file with all of your code. Break it up, put it in the right files and the right folders so that way it's easier for you to find and to maintain. Keep it short so that way it's concise and easy to read. If you have very complex code, then definitely add your comments. And make sure to use pseudocode. Pseudocode is great because it helps you to outline your thought process. Use flowcharts to see how the code's going to be implemented and run. And sometimes you got to take breaks, walk away from the computer, go outside, get some fresh air. Your brain needs to recharge. And then of course, make sure to refactor your code often. Go over it as much as you have to. You're going to have your rough draft. That's going to be the time that you probably code a little bit faster. But then you're going to make sure you go over it a few times. Make sure you fine tune it. You take it from your rough draft in your development process to a production ready code. Now, this reminds me of one of the books that I have, and somewhere within my library, I got to organize it better. But I also have an audiobook, and it's Thinking Fast and Slow. See if we can focus on that. It's by Daniel Kahneman. And Thinking Fast and Slow, he provides a lot of tips that I've been talking about in here in terms of, your thought process, in terms of what you have to do to make sure you get things done right. Because sometimes going slower will lead to better and faster results. In the book, and this is not going to be a detailed overview of what he covers, but he talks about System 1 thinking and System 2 thinking. System 1 is fast thinking, speed of thought, following your intuition, playing speed chess, typing 100 words per minute in your code editor. This is automatic, it's instinctive. It's the brain's fast and intuitive approach. System 2 is slower thinking. This involves deliberation, analysis, and concentration. It's slower, more conscious, effortful, and it incorporates a lot of logic. And then in the book, he talks about cognitive ease and cognitive strain. At first, it might make sense in your head to be able to type out as fast as you can to code as fast as you can. And it might seem easier, but in the long term, it's going to lead to more problems. You're going to have more bugs in your code, and that's going to take you more time to resolve. Deliberate and slow coding might seem boring. It might not be the most energizing or invigorating or adrenaline-inducing type of action that we can take, but it's going to lead to better results. Now, I can go on and on about this topic, but in reality, I got to get back to thinking about code and then writing code. Maybe get some bullet chess in there, maybe play some classical chess. And then I got to start planning and recording some more videos, especially what I'm working on now in terms of helping people code a custom WordPress theme. I have that 5.5-hour video, and that's definitely still relevant, but I'm implementing a lot of new strategies in terms of coding, in terms of using static analysis tools, dynamic analysis tools, using a lot of automation. So again, if you want to support this channel, head on over to pixelmerb.com and consider purchasing a copy of DevWP. Everything is going up. The prices of food goes up, electricity, housing. So whenever you make a purchase, whenever you support this channel, it definitely helps. All right, so that's it. I just wanted to talk about the paradox of slowing down in order to move faster in code. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification icon. If you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, leave them down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy coding.